Ren? Thank you.
Was it a thin-bedded tibetites?
Yeah, what is the name of the trace fossil here?
Can you tell us what these guys are? Peter Dictum?
Is that what that is?
Yeah. We said it was chicken mesh.
Those? No, that's a different.
But these are also parallel.
These are all parallel. Well, can you spell that for me?
This color. Transported in the sand flows. If you threw some names at me, I could tell you. Yeah, that's over there.
Yeah, okay.
I've seen this. Yeah, I've seen it. This is all red, yeah.
Well, it's interesting to place it in the context. They haven't worked the method for what environment you place, or I place some of those things in. It's interesting to see some of the intense environments. I've never actually seen rot. Just talk about the foraminifera and the things that are supposed to live in those environments. So to see some of the environments is
Okay, we're continuing down this path from 2 to not one C3 because the acidity is quite large. Strength in comparison. But we're approaching the core of the major anticline about where these people are here. Like TC. It's original as chalk. Right. But again, keep in mind that that anticline was probably the basis of all hope for Big Island of Barbados for a long time.
Can you review the Baldwin thing with the fission track about the age? I can't remember the details.
All right, Christina Baldwin, some 15, 20 years ago, sampled a lot of the Scotland sandstones, basal complex sandstones here for zircons,
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
and did fission track dating on them. She had something like 75 secrets. Bulk were Precambrian. Some were Paleozoic and Mesozoic, and about 20 were in the Cenozoic, younging up to a minimum age of 25 years. And so the youngest ones are pretty difficult to explain. I'm quite confident that they are wrong as far as giving a minimum age of sedimentation, because all of the faunas are Eocene or resedimented older ones, and then all of the micas that we have done argon 4039 on from these sand sequences here are no younger than Eocene. Many of them are Precambrian too, so we have definite provenance of the craton of northern South America, and probably Paleozoic and early Mesozoic terrains of the South America, or these sands, which have been then tectonically transported from west to east. To try to cough up an explanation for Christina lowest temperatures reached in these rocks probably 60 degrees centigrade. There is evidence for hotter fluid coming through. It might have gone to 130 degrees, but nothing reached.
Trying to say they were right. I can't remember for the life of me why they thought they were right. See?
Well, our man John Saunders could answer that, and I couldn't. I think it had to do with an echinoid.
Why did Harrison do his best right?
It'd be too tired to remember to ask the question.
I think it must have been megafossils in the deep water conglomerate that we shall see shortly on here.
They might have been from down there.
I think that the view today would be that they were unidentified. The identification of that Miocene call on either a clam or a mechanoid was Trachemon.
Yeah, he thought the mollusks were Eocene and R.G. Hill before him. Although I don't think it's a throwaway line in one of Hill's monographs. It's a paper he was going to write later, and I'm not aware he ever did. He thought the same. So.
Okay.
Out of mud volcanoes, or they're just rolling on?
Just channel walls.
Yeah.
So almost certainly the channels were cut through recently deposited stuff.
Yeah?
We're in Unit TC2, fairly high up stratigraphically. What I should like to have you do is call attention to that gap through the hill over there, which is where the southern boundary fault of the packet number 1 is, the one that circumscribes the whole southern edge of this packet, and cuts off that limb of Unit TC3 of the anticline. Just cut off clean, so this fault zone is indicated by several things. One is stratigraphic truncation, totally different stratigraphy on both sides of the fault, structures within the fault that you can read about in the manual here, which are spaced foliation, now with slickenside and striations at places. You can find Boudinage sandstone, and within the fault zone we shall find a bit on that there is a very small thin packet of radiolarite, which is older than anything hereabouts, even with the age uncertainties. And so there has been transport within that fault zone. Now, in doing structural analysis on both sides, my conclusion was that the fault zone is left oblique slip, which was a kind of a surprising result, and I find it hard to explain in the context of either original accretionary tectonics that put the basal complex together, or reactivation in later Barbadian tectonics, left oblique slip.
Which side up though?
I can't say that. That's only the strike slip component. And by saying left oblique, I mean also there probably was a normal component, but I don't know what it is. The fault is vertical.
Why do you think it's oblique?
Can't answer.
Sorry,
Layer a little bit that there's foliated mudstone. You can see discrete sandstone factoids, which are shear-bounded bodies of thin-bedded sandstones that are distributed throughout this.
Here you see a very nice fault. Very nice one.
Yeah, okay, that's in.
Sitting like a gas. No, anybody.
Sort of fine grainish turbidons. We've dated single rad stones and the terrigenous beds originally existed together stratigraphically. Did they come tectonically from different places that were juxtaposed here, or were they derived from an initial stratigraphic sequence? And the answer is, of course, nobody knows. But what I would say is that the radstones are generally older than the terrigenous beds, and it's possible that on the floor of the original Caribbean sea floor that you had a pelagic layer of radiolarites, and that above that then you had this flysch from northern South America deposited to be the terrigenous beds. And that is what got scraped off together, but with a break between each radstone and each terrigenous package. Probably the reason for the break is that the clays of the radstones are highly smectitic, and so they are probably exceedingly weak layers, so that a detachment in an accretionary sequence would tend to propagate along either the base or the top of the radstone unit, and the faults would then imbricate up through the overlying terrigenous strata. So I am postulating, and there's nothing more than that they were an initial stratigraphic sequence. The older part of the stratigraphic sequence, the radstones, late early Eocene to up to middle Eocene, the terrigenous, middle Eocene, late Eocene, maybe to early Oligocene. So that's as far as we'll ever get, I think, towards the base stratigraphy. Now it's all fault disrupted.
So the radstones have been close to the adult prime.
That's right.
That's the wrong side of the arc. So we're talking about protochar.
And you'll see that we come down through an isoplanar fold in the sandstone here, and there are disrupted sandstones and mudstones, big variation and variation.
used. Waypoint 48. This seems to be the reservoir here. Oil impregnated sand.
Reservoir. It's migrated 5 meters.
So this is the best view of the hottest bedding in the massive TC3 unit. Larry is parallel. You can see that there are some exceedingly thick units, and then there are some that are just very thick. You can see a few dark bands crossing there. They're mudstone twigs. Okay, now Unit TC2 with some structure.
I can see that being TC.
Letting parallel fault above.
Under.
With the fault bend fold in the hanging wall.
But he's drowned. Yeah, he's drowned. Go under the cave. Divers have to go and pick people up.
This is wide, centimeters wide. That is plastic band. It's a distributed shear zone rather than just simply a 9-inch fault. And that's a band plate.
Soft sediment deformation.
All with calcium carbonate deposits in it. Some cataclysms here. So we see fluid escape structures here, and in fact you can see one very large one that comes up here with an amplitude of over a meter. So these were fluid rich and upon deposition defluidized. Tommy! Tommy! Okay. Channelized.
Come, Jim. Plaisance conglomerate.
Pretty well symmetric. And I suspect the 3 Tinmahitas. The Tinmahitas is probably recording some up and down motion of the coast that permitted this stuff to escape from a very large shelter Oh, we have radiogenic isotopes of neodymium in some area, in strontium.
Bus.
We have 4049 and heavy minerals on this granitic general source. There's nothing good. mud that comes down with the sands. We have very thick single or amalgamated sandstones here, as you can see, with cannonballs very large stones due to diagenesis and resisting. They're usually located where there are concentration of blood traps due to the extreme sediments, culminating in a great big diagenetic cannonball. Here we'll see some muddy fine-grained sandy beds that are organic rich. You'll see microscopic twigs or something like that in there. And those are ones that we have dated with radioaromatase, middle ESC. They're resedimented, but that gives you a minimum age. To the right a bit, you can see one of the slumps, these two slumps of turbidite Barbados. That's the grass. You see, this is one of the that's how it's done. Which underlies the grass, and then there's unfortunately overlain by more sand. So as we go through here, we'll go through an oscillation, sand migration, and the sand bed slumps. There are many sedimentary structures. It's like a big slinky, isn't it? The crowd. That wall of this valley, and we have deposited what you see here is a very dark, muddy sequence. Unit TC5. As you mount that hill going stratigraphically uphill, we have renewed sedimentation on sandstones and a thickening upward sequence on that hill in unit TC6. So it appears all to be in stratigraphic continuity, and the interpretation of this muddy sequence in terms of fan faces is that it's an abandonment. The fan that delivers the UC3, the massive sandstone in its channel, had its source removed, and channel fill of unit TC4 filled it mostly up, and then there was no more delivery of sand soils or conglomerate particles to the fan system. Muddy turbulence, which were not channel confined. So from there, this is what we get. Now this rock is very TOC high. I can recall analyses of 10-12% TOC in this rock. What you will see are beds that are slightly emergent and more resistant ones. Many of those are strictly diagenetic in the sense of being composed of jarosite or other iron sulfate minerals that seem to hold it together more. The white ones are very thin sand layers, some of which are CE turbidites. Other ones are what we call C-sharp turbidites in the sense that both top and bottom of the very thin fine-grained sand beds are sharp. They are not graded with adjacent mudstones. The mudstones are graded in themselves from a brownish bottom through a greenish top. The greenish top represents, and that's all within about a centimeter's thickness. The greenish top would be where there are no organics, and so it would be a strictly pelagic mineral layer, clay layer, and the organics seem to concentrate in the brown lower parts, and so the grading is in organic content. So have a look at these abandonment faces here. You will see quite a lot of small-scale folds, as is appropriate for the thickness of the layers being folded. Oh, well, yes, right over there. steeply south-dipping dike-like form, which runs out east to the eastern shelf and runs west another couple of kilometers at least, where it gets lost in the structure. It probably pinches out to the west. Again, it's self-dipping and its width of outcrop here is about 3 kilometers. Its northern limit is under the pine trees up there on Fifth Hill. Originally, I had thought that this diapir was intruding the Miocene Essex Hill Formation. In later years, I found I was bamboozled by landslides, and that the correct juxtaposition is that the Essex Hill Formation is thrust over this diapir. Essex Hill, again, being a Miocene sediment. Okay, so I do believe that this riser's diapir, or packet 18, is Miocene emplacement of the basal complex. Its history has generally been that it represents ingredients of the basal complex, that means lithic fragments, sand and mud, that have welled up probably 2 kilometers more or less, and formed this dike intruded in the basal complex, and has since been squeezed in late deformation together with the basal complex, producing a boundary parallel foliation that you will see when we get to good outcrops.
So you said Eocene emplacement. Are you implying that it was in place in a bathymetric time when the stuff that we were just looking at was...
In just the early accretionary complex. So that diapirism was contemporary with off-scraping. We had some advective motion of some of the materials making a diapir. Now, as we will see here, well, I should first say, then, looking at the contact zones of diapirs in Barbados is pretty hard to get to, and usually you have to dig a big hole to see these things. They're very instructive, but not good for field trips. Here we're going to the most accessible, which means not jungle crawling, most accessible exposure, large exposure of the diapir, in the central part of it. So you'll be able to see the typical internal structure of the diapir. It has constituents that are, one, large blocks of rock. All of these blocks most of them are either sandstone, some are rhyolite, and some are layered sandstone and mudstone. The second kind of block is calcitized basal complex, and probably these calcitized zones represent cold vent exits out of former seafloor. These have been broken up and readjusted in the diapir because of its upward motion. There is isotopic evidence of that origin, as well as some followings. There are various shelly things, burrows, wood tubes that are collectively these things. And maybe we can see one block that I think has remained where there is good cold vent community material. Another reason to go to this diapir is that it has mollusks that are distributed in it. And it's the only one of the diapirs with a unique species of mollusk named by Peter Young in Switzerland, Nuculana sena. And so that's a constituent. The fourth constituent that we shall see is small green mudclasts. And they are alien to the surface rocks of the basal complex, but must be from the basal complex in some depth. They're essentially pure mudstone. The clays in them are the same kinds of clays that populate the surface rocks, surface mudstones of the basal complex. So those are the classic ingredients, except for the matrix, which is everywhere, and it's quartz, sand, and mud. Same old story, looking like microscopic sediments all mixed up, ingested with it by humans, and then foliated. And I think we'll all be able to see all of these things pretty well exposed as we walk down the hill bit into Joe's Valley. John, would you, John is a published scientist about the Joe's River diapirs?
Yes, well, we've studied what's in them, and as Bob said, Peter described this Nuculana sena. It's a shell that looks like this. you may find pieces of it. And if so, please save them for me to take back if they're good enough. And so that's one thing. It's normally a fairly shallow water piece, but of course now that we've seen these a lot more of the fauna around these deep smokers and so on, you wonder about the size. They're very large. They might have been just in a very favourable environment originally. And then the other thing we have are these agglutinated forms, which we really, I can't put a name on, a number on, a species on, but they're a dendrophyra. And these, they will be too small to find, but we've got them out of many samples.
What would be the scale on those, John?
On the scale, it's about, that's 30 times. So it's...
So a hand lens would see them?
Yes, oh, you could see them with a hand lens, sure. And they're usually, because there are other things like platyciforms, you know about platyciforms. They're all squash flat too. And then there are cyclamenas and things as well. So it always has, it only has this rather strange form. We wonder how it got like that, whether there's something rather special about the origins of the thing. It certainly has been, then it has become mobile, come up and so on, but we wonder what it was like. It seems most like the clays in the Scotland to the north, to Clifton, and but they're not the same platyciforms at all. This a bit similar, but we have this very strange fauna. And over the other side, why I got Basil to put this paper together, Kugler and Jon and myself, because on the other side, the samples that were taken going up towards Hackerton's Cliff over there, they have a bit more sand in and so on, and shells too. And again, it's an unusual situation. So there's something strange about this. It seems very close to what we know as mud volcano muds, which are just, of course, they become diaphyrs most easily. And they, anyway, have rather low specific gravity, so they're like, because they seem to have a lot of gas. This has quite a lot of gas in it. And up to the surface they come. Well, you've got plenty of mud volcanoes of diaphyrs on the Barbados Ridge already. Some of those probably, if you've got them at surface. Well, maybe you see, the thing is that I don't know whether it would fit in with what you're saying about it here, but if it had come out to the surface at the time that it was really being laid down, you could say, these things like nucleanas could have lived there and lived round vents and so on. So it's still a bit of an open question. You can look at this publication I've got here, if you please let me have it back, and see what sort of thing we've got in. But that's all we found. We haven't found anything else.
So you said something about two communities.
Yes.
Do you see those in there?
Yes, we'll see some vent community, which is really just calcitized zones of diaphyr rock, but with occasionally you can see tubes and burrows and shells, and even a nucleana, I think a mollusk.
Right.
So I'm glad to be here with John. Bless this.
Yeah.
And so you have nucleana and you have so they must have been extrusive from the sea.
Well, we
No,
think...
they may have been protrusive. They may have been viscous enough. They made a big mound like so many modern diaphyrs do, but not exactly flowing out like a less viscous lava.
Exploding and flowing, but there was some type of bathymetric
Something that
expression.
came up and the clams dug in all over the place and then they just sank back down.
Like
So
some
deep
of
water.
the Gulf.
So that that's a possible story. It came up for two dog. So one can tell from the internal structures out there as it progresses, he's watering and increasing strength in these dietary bodies because they go from flowed fabric to cleaved fabric with pressure solution, and then finally to halted process.
Would you believe that all the farmers
Phosphate grains, launch the sand.
It looks like oil sand.
Very much so. Yeah, John has a piece that is bleeding some oil.
Right now? Like on the South Coast you have active sea. I'm surprised it's still land like this in Barbados.
One or two people probably own the whole shebang.
There's nothing really going on here.
Out in the bush.
Means that there's reservoirs somewhere in the area.
You know, you have the tar sand.
Think of that, there'd be opium water.
is that right there?
I would buy that as an interesting fracture, and I'd love it to be an interesting We need a Burgess shell fauna here, but I'm afraid I'm not buying this one.
Oh yes, those very fine angular stuff in there.
This is calcite.
No, this is one with the mud class. Hey, there are some small pieces higher up the hill.
How could you get deep water rads up on the surface up here, because they'd only been known from the Challenger and so on at that time from really deep water. And then it really next Sen had a whole lot of samples when Sen was doing the mapping in the 40s in this area, in the whole of Barbados. And then Beckman was in Basel. He looked at all Sen samples, and then he did the Benthex on them. Then Beckman came to Trinidad, and I went to Trinidad, and we started thinking about looking at this again. But then there was the conference. It was the 4th Caribbean Geological Conference, and that was in '65, and everything had been turned upside down. Some of you will know that Walter Blow and Eames and so had said there was no Oligocene in the Western Hemisphere. Well, this seemed a little... Walter was with us at that time in Trinidad, so I thought I could see why Walter said it, but anyway, so we started looking at it again, because I thought, well, if this is a deep water assemblage all the way up, looks to be continuous, we must get up into the Oligocene. And Martin Kay, who was the man who started these conferences, he had been doing a lot of work here, and he'd taken samples, and I'd looked at his samples, and I'd got the Miocene up there at Codrington College, and we got the Eocene down here, and it looked like a complete sequence through. So we started doing this work, and I forget how, then it must base, oh well, first of all, we did a quick paper for the conference in '65, Cordy and I, and we found the Oligocenica zone, which was the only part, the only zone that Blow would accept as being Oligocene at all. Well, we found that, and we found that it went right through, and we had a series of samples up there. So then the whole scene changed rather, that everybody in the world got interested in looking at boundaries, and they wanted the Paleogene to the younger boundary, and they wanted to see what all these looked like. And also there was the question, when we found the Oligocene here, there was the question of having tektides here, the American strewn field, yes, and we wanted to see whether they were here. Well, Professor Speed was down with his students. Had you already come down to work here? Sure. Yes, you were working here in all this area. So we all got together and started the progress of making trenches up there. We took all the parts that you could reach easily, and then in between we trenched. And Annika Sanfilippo came down here and did a lot of the rad work in Bel Air, actually. She took stuff back. She found the tektides in Bel Air. And then rushed out again. We'd gone back then, but there were people here probably.
I was here.
You were here then. So then you did build sampling in the camp. So now we've got the whole thing, and it was put out as in the Oligocene boundary in Premily silver and Pomerols, terminal Eocene events, and all that sort of stuff. So I'm afraid I can't get up there too well now, but you will see that as you go up the hill, you don't have that. Right, sure. Well, as you go up,
Figure 46 is close to this.
yes. Well, you go up, I'm holding it this way up because this is where we are. Yeah. You go up and you can get a lot of outcrop samples through here. Then you have to move over, and then it's all trench. Now that's filled in, but are there some markers left? No.
So
Okay.
there may be, but the grass is feet deep.
Sure. So I'm afraid you can't see the actual site now, but you can get from other outcrop areas above, you can get some extra material that you can't get the boundary now. So that has the whole thing in it. Then, well, we discuss about the boundary. This is not a very suitable place for having the boundary because it's rather too deep, and it's too close to the calcite CCD. So the lower samples don't have, and even some of the upper ones, they don't have a complete fauna. In fact, we have a loss of from 90 to 100% of calcareous fauna as against arenaceous, agglutinated fauna. But still we have enough to use. And when we get to the boundary, it's rather better. They're about 50-50. So it's all been put down, and the charts are all here, showing benthic 4-ounce plankton and rams, and nanos, and ash, and so on.
So that main product is in Saunders and Company, 1984 Journal of Micropaleontology, right?
Well, it's yes, that's right, in Micropaleontology 84. We've done a short paper just about the boundary, putting a few questions right, slightly later in 86. But it's there.
And I think it's interesting that the tektides occurred at, I think, 5 horizons, none of which was at the Eocene Oligocene boundary, or anywhere near where it might be, which destroyed a highly popular hypothesis floating around at that time that epical boundaries were marked by impact events.
Didn't Nick Donnelly also, oh, I'm sorry. Didn't Nick Donnelly also find some microtektites in one of those PSD holes off
yes,
the
yes, I think
Venezuelan coast?
on Lake 15.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
yes. That's right. It wasn't far, but it was something like 2 to 3 million years from the iridium level had gone up in a broader band, but not particularly.
Okay, so if you want to do both. So there are about 10 million monkeys who live over here in these trees. And this is one of my favorite places because I lived over there across that bay. In that shack where the big rocks are, in the back of the white boat. Particularly, it's quite thick, 500 meters of beds altogether. Stratigraphic. From Middle Legacy, top, Middle Eocene to top Legacy. And the highest beds would be under what is called Codrington College, a tourist attraction, which is on the top of the terrace, a few hundred feet up.
And it's all very deep water.
It is. There seems to be no change in the bathymetry from orthodontic forams from Eocene to Legacy. Not very precise, but there's no indication that it has shallow or deep.
What stuff is this?
Well, this is stop 8. I'm not figure.